Welcome to Plains Bio. So today I'm going to explain more on what happened in the 5 deadliest airshow disasters in history, and I will start with the most shocking one. So sit back, relax and enjoy as I pass through these disasters, and be sure to stick around to the end to hear the terrifying truth about the deadliest airshow disasters that you might have never heard of, especially the last one. So the first deadliest airshow disaster on our list took place in 1973 at the Paris Airshow. Due to the rivalry of development of supersonic transport between the Anglo-French Concorde and the Soviet Tupolev 144. The Tupolev was ahead of the Concorde in terms of achieving a fast supersonic flight. It made this flight 4 months prior to the Concorde, and during the airshow, it was flown by a highly skilled Soviet pilot named Mikhail Kozlov and his crew. Mikhail had bragged that he would outperform the Concorde, and he was quoted saying, "Just wait until you see us fly, then you'll see something." And indeed they saw something. During the airshow, the Concorde was the first to perform, and it had performed a high-speed flyby followed by a dramatic climb, and its performance was deemed poor by some spectators. Determined to outshine the Western counterpart, the Tupolev pilots performed a similar maneuver as the Concorde, but during the climb, the Soviet pilot pulled the nose so steeply that the aircraft possibly couldn't recover. Tragically, the Soviet aircraft stalled at below 2,000 feet. It pitched into a steep dive, and in an attempt to recover from the dive, the pilot pulled controls, but it was too late and the aircraft disintegrated due to the immense stress on the airframe, and it plummeted into the ground, destroying 15 houses and claiming the lives of all 6 crew members on board the flight and 8 people on the ground. The second deadliest airshow disaster on our list is the one that you might have ever heard of, since it is to date the second deadliest airshow disaster in the world. But I will share to you the interesting facts about the Ramstein airshow crash, which occurred in 1988. On that day, the Italian Air Force display team, led by the highly skilled pilot Lieutenant Colonel Evonarelli, was performing its famous hat-paced maneuver when 3 aircrafts collided and ended up crashing into the ground in front of a crowd of almost 300,000 spectators. This crash was caused by a single mistake made by the well-experienced pilot Evonarelli, and it was all it took to cause the tragedy. The maneuver involved a split of 5 jets to the right to make one side of the hat, and 5 jets turn left to make the other side of the hat at just 130 feet above the ground, and the remaining solo aircraft, which was piloted by Narelli himself, had the task of piercing the hat. The problem arose when Narelli had completed his loop too high, so he increased his dive angle to correct it. This in turn increased his speed, so he tried using his air brakes to slow down, but it was too late. His aircraft clipped one of the other aircraft's canopy, killing the pilot instantly, and the aircraft disintegrated mid-air and plummeted into another aircraft's tail section. However, its pilot ejected but died after hitting the ground when his parachute failed to deploy. The spectators watched in shock as Narelli's jet hurtled towards them, while igniting 300 gallons of jet fuel. The aircraft skidded and collided with an ice cream truck. In total, there were 70 deaths and 346 injuries caused by this incident. The next deadliest airshow disaster is the Fermo airshow disaster in 1952. This is by far the deadliest airshow disaster in the United Kingdom's history. It involved the prototype of a de Havilland DH-110, which was piloted by one of Britain's most renowned test pilot, John Derry, and a flight test observer named Anthony Richards. At the time where aircraft were starting to conquer supersonic speeds, the DH-110 was the testament of achieving supersonic speeds. John had soared the aircraft to an astonishing 40,000 feet, then plunged into a dive and breaking the sound barrier as it passed by the crowd. He then prepared for another high-speed pass, this time around 600 miles per hour. But as he was attempting a right and climbing turn away from the audience, tragedy struck, as a catastrophic design flaw on the aircraft's swept wings revealed itself. This caused the wing's outer panel to twist. The aircraft disintegrated and its cockpit fell just right in front of the crowd after it was separated from the aircraft. Also, the engines fell off from the aircraft. One of the engines crashed harmlessly, meanwhile the other engine plowed into a crowd of spectators, causing the deaths of 31 people and left 60 others injured. It is one of the few disasters that did not involve a pilot error or mistake. The fourth deadliest airshow disaster took place in Belgium on July 26, 1997, at the Ostend Airshow. The disaster involved Captain Omar Balal of the Royal Jordanian Air Force, Royal Falcon's demonstration team. He was performing a solo display on an Walter Extra EA300, a well-known aerobatic monoplane. Reports indicate that there were gusty surface winds at the time that Balal was performing, although it is still unclear on the major cause. But what we do know is that Captain Balal was performing some spins when all of a sudden the aircraft entered into a steep dive and he was unable to recover the aircraft because he was too low. The aircraft then plummeted into the crowd, crashing right next to a Red Cross first aid tent, surprisingly, and bursted into flames. This incident claimed the lives of the pilot and 9 spectators, while injuring 60 other people. The Austin Airshow has never been held again since the disaster. And now on to the last and the most deadliest airshow disaster in aviation history. This disaster took place in 2002 at the Sknyliv Airshow in Ukraine. On a Saturday in July 2002, a Ukrainian Sukhoi 27 was scheduled to perform for the airshow. The fighter was flown by Vladimir Toponar and his co-pilot Yuri Yegorov. It is speculated that the pilots had requested to have more training to prepare for the airshow because they felt that the maneuvers they were being asked to perform were way beyond their capabilities and too advanced for them. But this request was denied, since it was rendered too expensive by the government. However, it is also said that the pilots were well experienced in performing those maneuvers. The pilots performed a split S maneuver, where the aircraft rolls upside down and then dives toward the ground, completing the bottom half of a loop. As they neared the bottom, they continued making a left turn, but they clipped the tree before striking the tarmac and dragging 4 rows of barbed wires that mowed over the spectators. It then crashed into the stands and exploded into flames. Both pilots ejected after the plane hit the ground, managing to survive although they sustained some minor injuries. In this incident, 77 spectators died in the crash and 543 were injured. Meanwhile, the pilots were blamed for the crash, and Toponar was sentenced to 14 years in prison and his colleague Yegorov was sentenced to 8 years in prison. If you learned and enjoyed anything on this video, please be sure to subscribe and also like the video, since this is the only way you can support this channel, which has just started. And also, if you have any query, feel free to comment below. I'm glad to reply to you. Stay safe and I'll see you next time.